Hey YouTube, it's Rocky from This Cruise Life, and I am here to tell you everything about my 5-night cruise here on board the Carnival Elation. I'm going to tell you everything that I loved, what I didn't love, and what I hated about this old fantasy class ship from Carnival Cruise Lines. So, stay tuned. Before I jump in, I want to say thank you for watching this video. If you haven't done it already, please subscribe to this channel. It's so easy, it doesn't cost you anything, and it helps the channel. Now, in typical This Cruise Life fashion, let's start talking about what I loved about the food on board the Carnival Elation. First, that was an amazing surprise, stepping onto the Carnival Elation and enjoying the food in the main dining room. It was outstanding. The crew really takes pride in the work that they do, and the type of food that they put out is just top quality. I was so happy all 5 nights. Now, one thing that I will say that really stood out about the food in the dining room was the soups. They were the right temperature, they weren't over-salted, they were really, really tasty. Do not miss the soups in the main dining room. Something else that I noticed when I was on board another Carnival ship earlier this year was Pizza Pirate transforms for breakfast into Bagels at Sea. And we found this here on board the Carnival Elation, and I was so happy to see it. A fantastic concept that Carnival has come up with. You can choose different bagels, choose different schmears, and build the bagel the way that you like it for breakfast. Way to go, Carnival, with that update. And in addition, because it's such a small ship, the deli also doubles up as a breakfast station. Over at the deli on the Carnival Elation, they do omelets in the mornings for you. So you can have your omelet made to order. Love that touch. And if you're still looking for breakfast, can you believe there is another breakfast station that they've added that's not even a part of the buffet? Located between Guy's Burger Joint as well as Blue Iguana Cantina, you'll find another service station that doubles up as the specialty breakfast option where you can find the Latin breakfast. There's another omelet station and another set of wonderful grab and go type of items. And of course, we can't skip over Blue Iguana Cantina that fast. I loved their breakfast burritos, and they had a rotating daily offering that just blew my mind. I have never seen rotated daily specials at Blue Iguana Cantina, and it was so good. I'm so bummed that I only caught this on the 3rd day of my cruise. I missed out on a couple of options, but what I did taste was fantastic. Now, I will say, going back to late night offerings at the late night buffet there, they had some really good options available, very similar to what I saw on Carnival Panorama earlier this year, with a lot of different crunch roll flavors and some chicken tenders and those Chicago deep dish style pizzas. Now, I will say that the pizza was not the best, but you know what? You can't win them all. But overall, that was really enjoyable. And of course, Guy's Burger Joint was fantastic. I did have a couple of Guy's Burgers during the day while on this cruise, and I will say that they met the standards of expectations that I had for Guy's Burger Joint, and I did enjoy it. So don't miss Guy's Burger Joint there on the Carnival Elation. Well, that's everything that I loved about the food on board this ship. Next, let's talk about the drinks. When I'm on a Carnival cruise ship, I'm always a little hesitant about Alchemy. That bar always tends to draw in the crowds, and it's always so busy and so noisy, and it's really difficult to get a beverage. Not on the Carnival Elation. The location of Alchemy is in a very tucked in location where not many people even think about going for their late night beverages. So when I went over to Alchemy, I was greeted by some lively atmosphere, great bartenders, and quick service, and I loved that about the Elation. Another bar that was fantastic was the Drama Bar, which is the bar that's just on the backside of the casino over there. The Drama Bar had some wonderful bartenders, and they did a great job at coming up with a great old-fashioned when I ordered one night of my cruise. Now, I didn't have the drinks package, so yes, I did end up spending money for this old-fashioned, but it was absolutely delicious, and all of the crew, honestly, across the Carnival Elation, at least at the bars, were really friendly, really energetic, and happy to have a conversation with you. I loved that about this small ship. Well, that's it for the drinks on board the Carnival Elation. Next, let's talk about the entertainment. It was so cool being on an old ship because I got to see some of my favorite Playlist Productions shows. Oh my gosh, Epic Rock was on board the Carnival Elation, and I was there for it. I loved every moment of it, sitting in the front row and just really like a kid in a candy store as I was watching the different scenes unfold. Like Meatloaf's I Would Do Anything for Love, but I Won't Do That. It was just fantastic, and it totally brought me back. They've also had the opportunity to introduce another more modern style show, and that was Heart of Soul. Heart of Soul was actually really good. I was very impressed. I have seen Heart of Soul on another ship, and I didn't love it so much on the other ships in the fleet. However, the Carnival Elation theater just kind of has that good feeling about it. I think maybe it's the intimacy of that theater, the intimacy of the ship overall. It was great. Plus, one of the highlights for me from this cruise was getting to see some Playlist Productions cast members that I had sailed with previously. I'm looking at you, Deshawn. Congratulations on an amazing time with the brand. It was great being on your very first contract on the Carnival Splendor and then getting to reconnect with you on the Carnival Elation. Kudos to you and best of luck in your future career, as well as Caitlin. Caitlin was a part of the cast when we sailed on several other ships, and she is now the entertainment director. Caitlin, keep doing what you're doing. You're amazing. Now, this was my first time sailing with this cruise director. His name was Uncle Johnny, and I will tell you, I was a little hesitant at first about what I thought about him, but as the cruise progressed on, I actually really came to enjoy Uncle Johnny's humor and his style and his method of being a cruise director. I did go to the Q&A session that he hosted in the theater, and I got to learn so much about him and his personality. He's been within the industry for many, many years and actually worked for another Carnival Corporation cruise line in the past, and then decided to come over to Carnival Cruise Lines as a cruise director, and he is making waves. If you have an opportunity to sail with Uncle Johnny, do not miss that chance. He is fantastic. I also enjoyed some trivias along the way. I did manage to take home a Carnival Elation ship on a stick, I am proud to say, and that was a lot of fun. But overall, the Carnival Fun Squad really made it a great time. They knew what they were talking about. They hosted their daily trivia activities, and it was a lot of fun, so don't miss that. I also saw a couple of dance classes that were hosted, especially the one up on the top deck. I really enjoyed watching people interact and take place in that class. Now, this was hosted in a very unique spot that's unique to the fantasy class of ships. There's a little stage right there beside the pool up on the top deck of the Carnival Elation, and it was really cool getting to watch so much of the Playlist cast getting involved with the instruction. Usually it's just one or two members of the entire cast, so it was really cool to see so many of them up there during this instruction. Additionally, this ship had the silent disco. Now, it was interesting because the silent disco was hosted in the Limelight Lounge, which you would expect on any of your other larger Carnival cruise ships, and this location was packed. I didn't realize that there were as many people on this ship until I went into the Limelight Lounge for the silent disco. Oh my gosh, they had 3 different channels going. You could hear people singing. They knew the songs and they were belting them out. Take a listen. It was so much fun, but I will tell you, it got really hot really quick, so I didn't stay for much longer. I ended up leaving there and going to explore the rest of the ship at night, which was so great. Coming back to Uncle Johnny and some of the other entertainment that was available on board, I really enjoyed the Love and Marriage show. Johnny did such a great job at hosting this wonderful experience for the guests on board. The couples that he called up to join him on stage were hilarious. They really had a great time up there. Now, one of the things that Uncle Johnny did differently that I've never seen before is he separated out all of the couples for the question asking. This way they couldn't confer with each other on the answers. Great choice, and I loved how it turned out. It was really a lot of fun to watch. Now, one other venue that I heard that was really doing well that I never had a chance to even go check out was Duke's Piano Bar. Duke's Piano Bar was busy every single night of the cruise that it was open. There were always people down there, and I heard rave reviews about the pianist that was performing in the piano bar for the cruise. He was fantastic, so if you are on board with him, please go check him out. Now, this was my diamond cruise with Carnival Cruise Lines. Yes, that's right. I finally crossed the threshold of 200 nights at sea with Carnival. I was so excited to get to celebrate it. I was by myself, but I still had a great time. So I made it over to the Diamond Luncheon by invite only, and it was so nice. It was a brand new menu that I had never experienced before on the cruise line, and I will say that the food was really good. It was really nice being able to sit down and enjoy the company of others on board, but stay tuned for something that I didn't love about my time at the Diamond Luncheon. And lastly, something else that I have to celebrate is the captain's toast. When the captain came out into the main atrium on board the Carnival Elation, the whole atrium just lit up. It was wonderful getting to see all of the different officers of the vessel coming together to celebrate this wonderful evening. Great job to the captain. Thank you so much for a safe voyage. And now let's move on to what I loved about the design on board the Carnival Elation. You know that you have walked onto an old Carnival classic cruise ship when you see Joe Farkas's touches all around. I loved all of the homages that Carnival still pays to his legacy in the design and build of all of their ships. You can see that all throughout the Carnival Elation, and I just want to take a moment to celebrate it with you. It is amazing. You definitely know it if you see it. Thank you so much for retaining that piece of history. And I do have to say, for a ship that is almost 30 years old, she looked phenomenal. I realized that the Carnival Elation just came out of dry dock only a couple months prior to my sailing, but overall the ship looks and feels great. There's minimal spots of rust on board, all of the paint is nice and fresh, everything looks so great. It smells very nice across the ship, which I know is a pretty big deal. And I was just overall very impressed and happy with how the Carnival Elation is holding up. And because I'm on an older ship, there's plenty of space to lay out. Whether you're on one of the top decks near the pools, at the very front of the ship, there's tons of options up there, as well as Serenity in the back. There is no way that you can't find a spot to lay out when you're on board the Carnival Elation. And something else that we just take for granted these days, the Carnival Elation has some very wide hallways. I loved that about this ship. No worries about passing someone in the hall, especially when the room stewards have their carts out there. It's still so easy to navigate through. And because of her older design, she has a fantastic atrium right there in the center of the ship with a beautiful skylight that lets in the natural sunlight during the day, and by night, it almost looks like a spider web is looming over you the way that it's lit up, but it's such a great communal space on board the ship. And the last thing that I can mention about the design was the location of my cabin. I chose an interior cabin on deck 4, which is the lowest passenger deck on the ship, and it was an interior hallway, so I didn't have to worry about any doors from the outside rooms. Granted, there's only a handful of balconies on this ship, but it was so nice having the peace and quiet of my interior hallway. I never knew what time it was, whether I was going to bed at, 10 o'clock, right, probably 2 o'clock, and waking up at 10 o'clock in the morning. Had no concept of time aside from looking at my phone. I absolutely loved that, and thank you, Carnival, for maintaining that ship. Well, that's everything that I loved about the design. Now let's rapid fire through some of the other things that I loved about the Carnival Elation. When Mark and I sail together, we usually request a 2-person table for dinner. On this cruise, I decided that since I was traveling alone, I would see what Carnival would assign to me to enjoy for my cruise. Well, I was placed at a 12-person table. 12 people! But the good news is there was never one time where all 12 people were seated together. In fact, at most, we would sit with about 9 people at the table. And I have to give mad props to the crew that were working our table. They were so fast and efficient. They didn't wait for everyone to be seated before they would take our food orders. Instead, they would approach you when you took a seat, and they would ask for your order, and they would deliver bread and water service right away. It was the best service that I have ever seen at a shared table space, and I loved it. Made friends with a bunch of people that were sitting at the table, and I am so glad that I had that opportunity. Something else that was unique about this Carnival sailing for me was that I actually spent some time in the casino. I will say that it is a much smaller casino, but I was very impressed for the size of it given the age of the cruise ship. Now, the casinos did treat me pretty decently, so I was really happy about that. Once I found that machine that I loved, I did find myself going back to it multiple times. However, I will say that there was a detractor, and it was a little smoky. Now, the old Carnival ships, they unfortunately are full smoking casinos, which means you don't really have much of a reprieve. Even if you go to the smoke-free section, you're still going to encounter some of that cigarette smoke. Overall, they had plenty of fresh air being pumped in through the casino space, but I made sure that I didn't spend too much time there because I didn't want my clothing to smell of it either. Now, something else that we absolutely love about when we go on a cruise ship is when we see crew that are taking pride and taking care of their ship, and that was no exception here on the Carnival Elation. There were multiple different instances where I saw crew that were actually taking time out of their day to dust spaces that guests wouldn't normally even touch, or crew members that were repairing some old potted looking designs that Joe Farkas put into place, and they were painting it and touching it up and just making it look fresh and new. I really appreciated that, and thank you so much for the dedication on the crew there. Now, something else that I loved was I got to experience a brand new port for myself, and that was the Port of Jacksonville. It was a really, really awesome opportunity to get to sail from the Port of Jacksonville, a much smaller cruise port, which offers a smaller cruise terminal and a more expedited system and process, whether getting on and off the ship. One of the highlights for me, besides the cruise terminal, was getting to sail under the Dames Point Bridge. What a cool experience. I always love when a cruise ship goes under a bridge because you get that adrenaline rush of, oh my gosh, is the ship gonna clear? Well, newsflash, of course it cleared. But it was such a cool experience, and that river going out to the Atlantic Ocean was just a really nice sailing along. Now, speaking of the rest of this itinerary, we did dock in Nassau. Now, there were 6 ships total that were docked there that day, which made for quite a busy day if you got off the ship. I decided to stay on the ship so that I could record an entire ship tour from front to back, top to bottom, that's coming to the channel soon. So make sure that you are subscribed to the channel so that you don't miss that one. One of the nostalgic points of this itinerary was I got to go back to Princess Cays. I was at Princess Cays for the first time 8 years ago on my second cruise ever. And I will say it was so cool getting to go back there and see Princess Cays again and getting to walk around and remember some of the old spaces and enjoy the lovely buffet style food that they brought onto the shore. It was a really cool experience, and I'm glad to have gotten back there. And finally, one last tip, and this one you're going to want to take home with you, is cruise tip. Make sure that you take a picture of the back on board signage at the gangways or wherever they're located within your cruise docking area so that you can remember exactly what time you, as a passenger, has to be back onto the ship. Well, that's everything that I loved about the Carnival Elation. Next, let's take a look at the list of what I didn't love. I know I mentioned it earlier on in this video that this was my Diamond cruise, and I was so excited to get to experience the embarkation experience that Diamonds usually go through. This was where my first didn't love item came up, and that was the size and the space that was dedicated for the captain's lounge in the terminal. Now, I do realize that that makes me sound like I don't appreciate what I've done and what I've earned, and trust me, it was a really cool opportunity for me able to go in there. However, the lounge was very small, no windows to see outside. You couldn't really hear what was going on out there when they did make a couple of announcements. They had a little library book corner, which people were very confused by. Why are there books in a cruise terminal? Strange. And last thing is there was no public restroom available when you were inside the lounge. So if you wanted to use the washroom while you were waiting for them to start the boarding process, you had to exit the lounge and speak with one of the representatives to gain access to the restroom. Didn't love that. Now, speaking of restrooms, moving on to the Carnival Elation, I was really disappointed in the number of restrooms that were available for public use. Now, the nice thing is it is a fairly small ship, so if you really have to go use the washroom that bad, you can easily pop down to your cabin and use that one. But it was just kind of surprising. There were many restrooms that I feel like used to be exclusive men and exclusive women and have since been turned into accessible and women. I wonder why that is. But either way, I noticed some people got very frustrated. There were definitely lines that were forming for all of those public restrooms. So that was definitely a didn't love for me. Something else, now this might be a little bit of a nit, but I was really uncomfortable sitting in the theater for the shows. Now, the nice thing is those theater shows are usually about 45 minutes. but of course I get there early because I want to get a front row seat. So that means I'm sitting there and the seat backs to those bunches that they have in there come up to maybe the middle of your back. So it was very uncomfortable after a while because you're sitting there trying to hold up the rest of your body. You can't really fully relax into it. Again, I know it sounds like a nit, but trust me, when you go to see a show inside the theater, you're going to thank me for that comment. Maybe bring your own theater-style folding seat with you. Something else that I didn't love was my cabin steward. Now, I will say that he did a great job at keeping my cabin clean, and he took care of things when I asked him to. However, it always felt like if I had to call him for something like when I needed to do some extra laundry service, he seemed like he was bothered and he really didn't want to have to take the time out from the work that he was doing to service me and provide me the things that I was asking for. You know, I understand that you're busy, and he could have said, hey, no problem, I will bring it to you, give me about 10 minutes. Totally fine. But the way that he grunted and then snarled and then brought it to me 10 minutes later, it just didn't feel great. I didn't love that. Now, I mentioned this teaser in the love section about the diamond lunch. Don't get me wrong, I loved the diamond lunch. It was a really cool experience. But something that really frustrated me and something that really I didn't love about the experience was the bar staff kept ignoring the table that I was sitting at. Now, I was sitting at more of a rectangular table, and it was a full table of 8 people, but all of the round tables surrounding us were getting constant service from the bar staff. I was able to get 1 drink when I sat down, and my 2nd drink as I was getting ready to leave the dining room. I did not love that. I'm sorry, I was hoping to get more, and I was even looking forward to doing a round of shots with my table. Didn't happen. I'm sorry, Mark. Now, something else that I didn't love, this probably won't impact your sailing, but it's still something to be aware of, was because this was my diamond sailing, I was unable to redeem my dining credit that I received from my dining vouchers. So when you turn diamond with Carnival Cruise Lines, as of right now under the VIFP program, you actually are entitled to visit one of the specialty restaurants on your diamond cruise. Well, the Carnival Elation doesn't even have a steakhouse on board. So when I spoke to the host at the restaurant, they said, oh, no problem. Just go ahead and select what items you would like off of the main dining room menu that are from the steakhouse selections, and you can enjoy those. And I'm like, well, I would rather save this for an actual steakhouse experience. Is that something that I can do? And they said, well, typically, yes, you can. We would recommend that you talk to guest services. So I did. I spoke with guest services and they said, yes, as long as you have the voucher, which I guess I'm going to have to laminate it, and as long as you haven't used it, they'll be able to pull it up in the system and see that I haven't redeemed it. Overall, a little frustrating, something that I didn't love, but again, it probably won't impact your sailing experience, but I feel like I should at least share it with you that, hey, the Carnival Elation does not have any specialty dining options on board. And the last thing that I didn't love about the Carnival Elation was the size of Serenity. Now, I understand that this ship did not launch with an adults-only area, or if it did, it was not branded Serenity and probably not in this location. However, where Serenity is located proves to be a quite small location. There are 2 hot tubs back there, and there is a generous amount of seating for the small space, but you are really on top of each other. Now, I guess it does work well for this size of a ship, but I think there are other opportunities and other places on the ship, like the very forward on the top deck, that they could have put Serenity instead of tucked into this weird spot at the back. Just my thoughts, and on the Elation, you walk down a guest corridor to get there, or you walk through the buffet to get there. I don't love the location of the Serenity. Again, your mileage may vary, but that's just my thoughts. Well, that's it. Small list of things that I didn't love. And next up is an even smaller list of the things that I hated. Something that I hated was when I walked into my bathroom inside my stateroom. I noticed that there was a very strong smell of a mildew or something that's been wet for a very long time. Now, when I would step into the middle of the floor, in some areas I would hear a little bit of a sloshing noise. I don't know what happened in the stateroom, and you know what, shame on me for not bringing it to my cabin steward's attention. Although if you listen to the section about what I didn't love, you may understand why that conversation didn't happen. But overall, I was really disappointed in that. I understand that it's a small ship, but I just hated that smell when I would walk in there. Ugh. And something else that I hated about my time on board was really the thought of the itineraries that the Carnival Elation does. Right now, she does an average of 4 to 5 night cruises. That small ship can handle so many better options. I would love to see Carnival Elation and Carnival Paradise doing 7, 9, even 11 night itineraries. Those ships are small, they're great for intimate gatherings, easy to find your way around and get to know the crew. The crew on board were absolutely phenomenal and they went out of their way to make sure that you were having a great time. So I would love to see the Carnival Elation's itineraries expanded so that the ship can visit other ports of call that ships like the Carnival Celebration can't even fit into. So there you have it. That's all of my thoughts from my experience on board my 5-night cruise on the Carnival Elation, the oldest cruise ship in Carnival Cruise Line's fleet. The question that comes to mind after getting off of that ship was, would I book this again? I have to say without a doubt in my mind that yes, I would absolutely sail on board the Carnival Elation again. The ship was in great condition for being a 30-year-old ship, and having such a unique itinerary and ship design really makes that ship feel like a home. I loved the interactions that I had with the crew members. I really enjoyed the dining room food as well as all the buffet offerings. I was impressed with what such a small ship could put out. So overall, the number of ships that I would give the Carnival Elation is 4.5 out of 5 ships. Yes, it was that great of an experience. If you are looking to get on board the Carnival Elation or even the Carnival Paradise, hit me up, let me help you get booked. You are going to have such a fantastic time. Or if you're looking for any other cruise advice or assistance with booking your next cruise or vacation plans, hit me up, rocky@thiscruiselife.com. I am a travel advisor and I love taking care of my clients. Now, if you found anything in this video that you liked, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Make sure that you have subscribed to the channel so that you can see that ship tour, the room tour, and anything else that's coming to the channel. And smash that notification bell so you can be aware of any of those videos when they come out. If you found anything interesting or you have further questions, drop them in the comments below. We always make it a point to respond to all of the comments on our videos. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and until we see you in the next one, we'll see you on the ocean. Bye.